Why World War II happened. World War II was not just another war. It was a violent reaction to injustice, to betrayal, to economic despair. It was not born in 1939, but in the ashes of the First Great War. To understand how humanity reached its darkest hour, we must go back. Back to a world that claimed peace but was quietly preparing for war. In 1918, World War I ended, but instead of healing, the world punished. Germany was blamed for everything. The Treaty of Versailles imposed brutal reparations, stripped its colonies, and crippled its military. This wasn't peace, it was humiliation. Millions died, but no one truly won. Europe was exhausted, economies were broken, and the seeds of revenge were already being planted. To avoid another catastrophe, the League of Nations was created, a global promise to keep peace without power. When Japan invaded Manchuria, silence. When Italy attacked Ethiopia, silence. The League had no army, no authority, and soon no credibility. The world watched as the first aggressions went unpunished. While democracies struggled with debt and division, dictators saw opportunity. In Italy, Benito Mussolini promised a return to glory. In Germany, a failed artist-turned-soldier, Adolf Hitler, preached vengeance and revival. They didn't just take power, they were welcomed. Because when people lose hope, they follow strength, even when it leads to destruction. Fascism demanded loyalty to the state above all else. Nazism added race, hate, and genocide to the equation. Both movements fed on fear, economic pain, and national pride. One leader, one nation, one destiny, no matter the cost. The Great Depression, a global collapse. In 1929, the world's economy collapsed. Banks failed, jobs vanished, hunger spread. In crisis, people didn't want freedom. They wanted food, answers, order, and so tyranny grew. The dictators didn't just rise, they became symbols of hope, built on control. So who started all this havoc? By the late 1930s, the world had fractured. The first to strike was Nazi Germany under Hitler, who dreamed of an empire reborn. Italy, under Mussolini, followed invading Africa. Japan launched its own expansion in Asia. Together they formed the Axis powers, bound by ambition, racism, and war. They weren't just preparing for battle, they were planning domination. When did World War II begin? The spark came on September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland without mercy. Just 2 days later, Britain and France declared war. World War II had officially begun, but for many, the war had already started long before. Then why did this war happen? It happened because the peace after World War I was never real, because nations were betrayed by those they trusted, because poverty, fear, and propaganda blinded millions, because power was worshipped, because silence was easy, and because the world refused to learn from its past. Where did it spread? World War II wasn't just fought in Europe. It spread to Asia, Africa, the Pacific, and the Arctic. It was truly the first global war, pulling in over 100 nations and affecting every single continent. To foreign and economic policies of major powers, Germany, under Hitler, embraced autarky, self-reliance. It rearmed in secret, rebuilt its industries, and sought Lebensraum, living space, through invasion. Japan turned to military conquest. It invaded Manchuria, attacked China, and pursued resources through brutality. USSR, the Soviet Union industrialized at breakneck speed. Stalin signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler only to be betrayed later. America stayed neutral until it couldn't. After Pearl Harbor, the US transformed into the world's industrial giant and the Allies' final hope. UK and colonial nations. Britain fought from the start, but it used its empire to do so. Over 2.5 million Indian soldiers served across the globe. They fought for freedom that wasn't theirs yet. The human cost and untold stories. The war wasn't just between armies. It was civilians who suffered most. By 1945, the world had changed permanently. Over 80 million people were dead. The United Nations replaced the failed League. Germany was divided. Japan was disarmed. The Cold War had begun, and the colonies started rising. They had fought in a war for freedom, and now they demanded their own. World War II wasn't just a battle of bullets. It was a war for power, justice, and survival. And its echoes still shape the world we live in today. It was the war that defined the 20th century and reminded humanity what happens when we forget the cost of silence. Hit that like and subscribe button, or I'll ask Hitler to drop by your group chat.